Welcome to the first week of the 2021 Swift Auto Challenge to become Magento certified. I am excited to have you all here, and I am seeing that you all are showing up, which is great. Welcome, and we'll be getting started here in just about a minute or two. Let everybody come in here. So I guess the first thing we could start doing is introductions. So you probably know who I am, Joseph here, and I'm heading up this challenge, but all of you here are joining into the challenge and watching this video. So if you, obviously we can see your name as part of your comments, but maybe if you could just drop in the comments where you're from and what you are looking to achieve, what certification you are looking to achieve. So both of those pieces of information actually will also be helpful for me as I go through what I'm going to share today, because at the end, we are going to touch on plugins. And there was a conversation in the Certification Challenge Slack channel, which if you're not a member of that, please join that, become part of it. You can do that by joining the Certification Challenge on our website, swiftauto.com/certifications. And at the top there's a link to join the challenge. And when you join the challenge, then you get a link to the Slack channel. If you aren't able to find that for some reason, just shoot me an email, joseph@swiftauto, and I'll get you into the Slack community as well. So, so it's great to have you all here, and I'm starting to see some people dropping in the comments what certification you're going after, and so that's really important for me to understand. Those of you that are watching today, what certification you're going for, because I'm going to tailor my talk today for that. All right, that is great. Welcome, everyone. It's wonderful to have you all here. Yes, the professional, great, excellent. All right, solution specialist, yes. Awesome. Well, this is wonderful. This is excellent. I am thrilled to have you all here. Absolutely thrilled. And I guess we'll be getting started. I guess it's my time. It's 9:01. And so I think what I'll start out by doing is sharing a little bit of my history with certifications, because that has greatly influenced who I am and what I do. And I think it will kind of help you understand how this picture is pulled together. So I started writing software when I was 10 years old. And I should put writing software in quotes, because it's laughable that I would even write software when I was 10. But that's honestly the best age. If you have kids, start them young. That is the best age to get them in that thinking. And I started in that thinking when I was 10 and progressed. I wrote some applications and whatnot over the course of the years. But it was back in 2010, when I started into Magento development, that I became very aware of the Magento community certifications. I guess let me back up. When I was 15 years old, I got my A+ certification, and I can't remember when it was. I got the Zen certified engineer, basically a certified PHP person, whatever you want to call it there. So then fast forward into 2010, 2011, somewhere in there, that's where I started getting the Magento certifications. I needed a way to prove to the world that I myself am knowledgeable at Magento. We were all familiar with Magento partners at the time. These people are, they're these big organizations, and they have lots of smart people working for them. But at an individual level, when, for example, I would be interviewing or talking with a merchant or something, I needed something that the merchant could see that, wow, this person, Joseph Maxwell, knows what they're talking about. And so I invested a ton of time getting the certifications. I think the first one was the Professional Developer Plus. I don't think they called it exactly that back then, but that was the first one. Then I worked through all the rest of the ones. I think back in 2018 at Imagine, if I remember correctly, I got my final Magento 1 certification, so I had all the Magento 1 certifications. And the value that I came to see out of that is not all these pieces of paper floating around. That Joseph has all these acronyms behind his name. Honestly, that I came to see, even though I went into it thinking that was where I was going to gain most of the value, I found that I gained most of the value in the study process. It was that study process that as I learned, as I worked through these different pieces of Magento, I became intimately familiar with this application. And that was where I started gaining the massive value. And today and through these next few weeks, that my experience will influence what we are going to be talking about, and especially focusing on, yes, the certification is important. I don't mean to devalue that in the slightest, but the certification is incredibly important. But 10 times more important is this training that you are going to force yourself to work through on hopefully a daily basis. And the value you will get out of that, again, will be about 10 times greater than the value of the certification itself. So in other words, if you think the certification is great, that's nothing compared to the value you will get for yourself in being able to be a true expert on the platform. So that's what I'm really excited about, especially here. So let's, welcome. Wow, this is great. Anna Vocals here, Kate Eldridge, Ruggero Landolina. Wow, Simon. Hey, Simon, thank you for your comments on the book. It's been outstanding. And I'll talk about a new book that I'm writing here in a little bit. I'm really, really excited about it. So let's jump into just a few things I wanted to share today. And then I want to have a conversation about plugins. I think Winston, if I remember correctly, yesterday in our Slack channel, was talking about the expert developer. And you'll understand why I have a little bit of hesitation when I say certification names, simply because they changed it all this past year. So we'll get into that a little bit here. So talking about plugins, and I want to give a idea as far as how to study, as well as some information on studying for these plugins. So let's jump in to our first week's information, what we want to talk about here. I want to remind everyone that these challenge meetings are every other Saturday through the end of March. So I will be sending out calendar invites for everybody, so then you can have this and you can add it to your Google Calendar, whatever you use. So then you're reminded about this, because I don't want you all to forget, because it is important. I've chosen Saturday because otherwise meetings and stuff like that always get in the way. So, and to be really frank, if there's another day of the week that works better for you, please drop that in Slack, send me an email, something, and maybe next year we'll consider something else. I want to make this the very best for people. Saturday seemed to work okay last year. This is what I'm doing Saturday this year. But if people have other suggestions or things that will work better, send me an email. So every other Saturday through the end of March, 9 a.m., negative 600 hours UTC. So mark that on your calendars. Also, suggest if you would want to subscribe to the Swift Otter YouTube channel. This is obviously where all of our streaming goes on. Then you can be notified as well. Just another way to understand what's going on. All right, so the number one thing I want to talk about today is setting the foundation. We need to set the foundation for how to avoid failure. And I think it's pretty important that we consider this, right? I mean, this would be the most important thing to consider. And that is this simple question: which test is for me? And so I'm going to go through each one of these tests this morning and talk about what you should be doing depending on your experience and your capabilities thus far. The last thing I want you to do is set your sights, your goal, on something that is not achievable within this time frame. And to be clear, the time frame, and I meant to put a slide up on this, but I forgot. The time frame is from starting now. This is when the certification challenge starts. Our meetings go through the end of March, but you have a deadline to hit of the end of May. So at the end of May is when we will announce the winners. We will select those who get those really awesome Apple Watches. I'm really stoked about that. I've been thinking about ways to reward people for putting in this effort, making this investment into their careers, and ways to motivate people in this. And so those Apple Watches, 2 Apple Watches shipped no matter where you are in the world, I think that's going to be, I hope that's going to be an incredible reward, encouraging you toward this goal of achieving your certification. All right, so let's talk about what certification is for you. Number one is this business practitioner. This is for those of you who would consider yourselves to be non-developers. This covers the Magento application, administration of it. If you are a project manager, you are a salesperson, you are a CEO, business practitioner is probably the one that you want to go for. It sounds easy. It sounds maybe fairly doable, but I want to assure you that this is one of the hardest Magento tests that there is. If you are going to be taking it, please make sure that your mindset is that this test will be no cakewalk and that you will invest a significant amount of time in it. Now, that is if you are someone who is more at management level, at least what I typically see. Those who are at management level have the hardest time for two reasons. Number one, they don't have a lot of time to study, which is probably the biggest problem. And number two, they're not in the Magento application all the time. They're not interacting with their merchants all the time. If you are interacting with merchants on a very regular basis and you are in the Magento application on a regular basis, and when I say in the Magento application, meaning you are in the admin panel, you are making changes, you are training merchants on how to use the admin panel, this would be you're on the pathway to get a business practitioner certification, if I can say those words correctly. Welcome, Adarsh. Good to have you in here. Welcome. And we're talking about the business practitioner certification. Unfortunately, this is the only test that is available for non-developers. So if you are not a developer, you got your work cut out for you. You have a difficult road ahead of you. And I don't say that to be discouraging, in the slightest, but it is what it is. This is a very difficult test. And you set your mindset for you should spend at least 30 minutes a day over the next, for sure, 3 months, probably more, maybe more like 4 or 5 months preparing for this test. Professional developer. This one used to be named the associate developer, and to this day, I still call it the associate developer. But this test is the entry-level Magento development certification. If you have even just a couple of months of experience in Magento development, you are at a place where you can take a course. So I have a course that I wrote, and there's other entry-level Magento courses out there on the market that are available. Whatever your choice, you probably maybe don't need the course in order to pass if you have maybe closer to a year of experience. Either way, the goal is to accelerate that learning, to focus in and to be able to get yourself to a place to pass. I hear on a regular basis that, people say this is the easiest Magento test, and I would probably agree. The problem is that this associate developer or the professional developer, personally, I think associate developer is more fitting to the name than professional, but professional sounds better on a resume, sounds better when talking to merchants. This test in particular, the term is the easiest Magento test. It is definitely not an easy test. You're not going to be able to just glance through the dev docs, Magento dev docs, and say, oh, yeah, that was a piece of, and then go take the test, right? So this is still a difficult test. Set your mind for that. But I find it to be the easiest of the Magento lineup. This is the test. It's also $195 to take. If you have not yet taken a Magento test, this is your test. You have to start with this one. Unless you're okay with throwing some extra money out there. It doesn't matter at that point. So, and if your goal is ultimately expert developer, you want to just take it a couple extra times, then just go for that. That's fine. But for most of us, professional developer is a great stepping stone in order to be able to get something concrete that is achievable, and then we can move on to expert developers, that if that's really where our sights are set. And that's, for most people, that's where their sights are set. And here's my thinking on this. There is a certain skill set with taking Magento tests. With these scenario-based questions, and we're going to talk in a future meeting about how to answer how to answer these questions. But with these scenario-based questions, and scenario-based questions are where the question sets up a scenario where it says like the merchant needs XYZ done, or this was done on their website. This is an error that has resulted. What is the cause of this error? So it's not like I can go through and, memorize stuff from a book and say, okay, well, I just have this book, I memorize it. No, it requires this practical experience. And the associate developer, professional developer, is a great way to get that under your belt, that idea under your belt. And then you proceed on to expert developer. So the other cool thing is once you get professional, then you go get expert, you now have 2 tests under your belt. You are 2x Magento certified as opposed to just expert developer, which is 1x. So I find that there's a good number of people who take the expert developer, fail, take it again, maybe they'll pass that second time, versus I see a ton more people pass the professional developer on the first time, then they go past the expert developer on the first time. That's just my experience, what I see, and I've talked to quite a few people on this. All right, so that's professional developer. That is the place to start if you have yet to take a Magento certification. The second one now is the expert developer. The expert developer, again, this is where most people have their sights set. It is an incredibly difficult test, but it's passable. It's passable by people all over the world. And this is something we'll talk about as well in a future meeting, so stay tuned for this. But non-native English speakers have a disadvantage. I will absolutely agree with that. While Magento tried to reduce the number of big words, there's still a few on there, and it puts people at a disadvantage. Now, the good news is with these name changes, one thing to note is there were no content changes. So these tests were the same as they were since were updated in, was it February of last year? These tests are the same. So that is good news. But the other thing is that the time limit has increased from 90 minutes now to 2 hours. So now you, instead of having 1.5 minutes per question, you now have 2 minutes per question, which I believe also has really helped people passing these tests. So expert developer, this one is, so if we have the Magento test lineup here. I would put this, and if we would rank them in order of difficulty, the most difficult would probably be Master Architect. So that would be number 8. Number 1, I'm going to put as professional developer. Expert developer is probably going to sit in there at like a 6 or a 7. And the other 6 or 7 will be business practitioner, right? So, 6, 7, and 8, roughly speaking, expert developer, business practitioner, and master architect. Those are kind of take up the top end of the spectrum. Expert developer is super difficult because it takes everything that associate or professional developer talks about, and it goes about 3 levels deeper. So if professional developer talks about, hey, how do I customize a plugin? Expert developer is going to talk about plugin sort order, and it's going to talk about problems or different types of classes that you can use a plugin or you can't use a plugin on. That's what expert developer is going to talk about. So again, the number of questions is the same, 60 questions, and I think the pass score is like 63%, somewhere in there. Professional, it's a little bit higher. I think it's 67 or 68, somewhere in there. But I mean, you still can miss 1 out of every 3 questions and you pass the test. So, you definitely have some wiggle room on there for being able to pass it. But again, expert developer is the difficult test. If you have not taken a test before, do not go for the expert developer first. Please change your mind, if I can, and go for the professional developer certification. Simon has a question. Sounds like you're saying doing the test as soon as possible after each other may help you pass. So would it matter if I did my first exam a year plus ago? Here's what I find as far as the investment in learning before taking a test. And I think it's pretty well collaborated across psychologists, industries, whatever you want to call it there. When we make an investment in learning, and we do it consistently, it has an additive effect. At least this is what I find. So spending 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever a day, every single day, it will add. Now, once I start missing days, at best, I kind of keep the same level of knowledge in my head. And once I pass the test and I take a month off or a year off, I find the value starts to drop. So it will be helpful. It's not going to be as good as if you just took it. And that's a good, I'm glad you brought that up, Simon, because with the last certification challenge, there was a number of folks who took the professional developer certification and they got really good scores, like 80 to 90%. I said, hey, you are in a position to go take the expert developer. Go study for a weekend and take it. One person studied for a weekend. I could go find our conversation in Slack here. One person studied for a weekend and they passed it. I think it was upper 60s, low 70s, if I remember correctly, the percentage on the expert developer. And the other person, I don't know, took a couple, 3 weeks to study and they passed it with flying colors as well. So I find these two tests very additive. If you just ace the professional developer test, just go ahead and take the expert developer as well. I think I said that right. If you ace the professional, go take the expert developer. So consider that. You're going to you are in a good position to do that. You could look at the professional developer as the practice test for the expert developer, except it's even better than a practice test because you still get a certification behind your name on that. All right, so I think if I remember, there was a couple of you that were looking back through the comments. So for the master architect, this is kind of the cream de la cream. Not many people have taken this test. If I remember correctly, this was back in the days when they had the Magento certification directory. I think there was less than 1,000 people that had taken the master architect test. 100 people, if I remember correctly. No, it might actually be 100 people on the master architect and maybe 10 to 20 people on order management. Very, very, very few on order management. Master architect, I think it was 100. I could go back and look it up. But anyways, master architect, very few people have taken this test. And it is very difficult. But I found, in some ways, I felt like the questions on this one were actually a little easier than on expert developer. There was harder questions about plugins and sort orders and all that stuff. And we're going to talk about that here a little bit later. But what I found the most difficult on this test was the conversations about Magento Commerce. Very few of us are deeply knowledgeable about, or even just on even a fairly cursory level, about staging. I mean, staging doesn't take much modifications, or target rules doesn't take many modifications. It just works. And so we don't spend much time studying on this. But Master Architect requires I found it to be a fairly cursory level of knowledge for each one of these. So that's what I suggest. If you take an expert developer and you want another challenge, dig into Master Architect, but you will need a commerce license. You will need access to Commerce Code. Otherwise, there's not a chance in the world you'll be able to achieve that. And so that's why I put that probably at an 8, just because from an overall experience level, few of us have information about this. Okay, so front-end developer. Front-end developer, this is the second easiest test. So if we have 1 being professional developer, we have 2 being front-end developer as far as easy. If your experience is with front-end development, take this test. That is the one you want to do. Even if eventually you're going to set your eyes on other tests or set your focus on other tests, start with front-end if your job title is a front-end developer. This one you have to basically know about, creating themes, working a little bit with JavaScript, working with less files. There's definitely some security. I think there's some security questions on there. Overall, it's fairly straightforward. So if you do front-end development, start with this one as the first one. Gareth, good. That was a great comment. I appreciate that. Yeah, so Gareth said that definitely agrees that the professional makes the expert easier. Take the professional first, and it will make your job taking the expert easier. Absolutely. Okay, so JavaScript. This is the test I took last year, and I'm a little disappointed. There's not any other Magento test that I can take. I'm not really interested in taking order management, but JavaScript developer is the one I took last year, and I built a video about how I studied, how I prepared for that, and then my taking of that test. That's on our YouTube channel. So if you would like more information about that, feel free to go over there. JavaScript, I would say that's probably what the 4. I'm going to put that as a 4 out of 8 as far as difficulty. I didn't feel like it was overly difficult, and I've done a decent amount of Magento JavaScript development, working with, well, let me say what this test is about. It's working with JavaScript. So there's a lot of focus on UI components. There's a lot of focus on Knockout, Require.js, customizing the checkout. So working with front-end UI components, not necessarily back-end UI components. That'll be what the JavaScript is focusing on. I found it a 4 out of 8. It didn't really seem like it was that difficult. Cloud developer, I'm going to put this one at a 3. This is easy. This is definitely easy if you have access to a cloud sandbox. If you don't have access to a cloud sandbox, don't worry. Don't bother taking it. Well, I say don't bother taking it. With enough study, you probably can pass it by reading dev docs. That's about all I can say there. It's I have seen people do that. Maybe this should be the 1 out of 8. I don't know. You just have to study the right documentation in order to be able to pass this. All right, let's catch. Order management. I think there's one of you in this challenge that's taking order management. Maybe 2 of you. I can't remember. There's not many people who are taking order management, simply because if I remember, Magento might even be phasing this out. So keep that in mind. If you want order management, just make sure that Magento is not phasing it out, because I've heard rumors about that. Can't say whether or not that's true or not. All right, let's catch up on a couple questions. Developer Hamendra says, thinking about taking the professional developer test first. Want to decide if it's the right time or if I'm ready for the professional developer. Okay, how are you know if you're ready for the professional developer test, i.e., what was previously the associate developer? So making sure we're talking about the same thing here, right? The professional developer test is, again, if you have maybe I'd say a year or 2 of experience, or have not taken a previous Magento certification, you're pretty much ready to take it at this point. If you have a year or 2 of experience, I'm not trying to sell courses. That is not at all with what I'm talking about here. This certification challenge is to help you all, but let's just say I have seen really, really positive results with our basic Magento developer course, or it's designed to help you pass the professional developer certification. I've seen really positive results on that. So if you are dedicated, you work through that course, I guarantee you'll pass it. But again, I'm not saying that you can pass it by working through the dev docs. You can pass it by just reading the study guide, working through that yourself. And again, I think this next meeting will present to you ways in which you can pass these tests on your own. Let's see. Jackie asked, is there specific questions related to Magento Commerce Cloud in professional and expert developer? No. There is no questions that are in there. But I should say that in Business Practitioner, there are cloud questions in Business Practitioner. There's not too many. Technically, you probably wouldn't need any knowledge of, I can say you would need no knowledge of Magento Cloud in order to still pass Business Practitioner. You're going to miss a few questions, but you do not need specific Magento Cloud knowledge. So the only 2 tests, just to be really clear, that in which there are questions about cloud is Cloud Developer, and Business Practitioner. Those are the only 2. Cloud is easier than professional. I'm going to say certainly if you have developed or released a Magento application on cloud, then that is probably easier, yes, than professional. You don't want to just not study for it. I still recommend studying for it. And again, I'm not trying to push our materials at all. But I say this just because I have seen it work. The cloud certification, the cloud study guide, and all that stuff, it does work. Anna said, Bartos, I'm probably going to mispronounce your name, but he says, I'd say that the cloud developer is a good test to take before you actually start working in Magento Cloud. That's hilarious. Okay, that's well put. Anna says, I thought I was ready for the professional developer without preparing, only with some only with some Magento X2 experience, and I failed by a few points last year. Yes, that is unfortunate. No matter what the test is, no matter how easy it sounds or seems or looks, you always want to prepare. That is very, very interesting. All right. Yes, professional developer is the easiest, but is not easy, if I can put it that way. All right, so let's jump into this. And I think one thing I want to make very, very clear is your study, as you invest in this every day, and we're going to talk about that in a second here, this knowledge is going to be worth far more than the certification that you get. So certification is valuable. I hope it gets you a bonus or at least more reputation in your company. You'll be able to have more intelligent conversations with the merchants, the people you work with. But this knowledge to you is incredibly valuable. Incredibly valuable. And so as we proceed through these next few months, never let yourself lose sight of this. Even if you were to fail the certification exam, and with the proper preparation, I can basically guarantee you won't. But even if there was the chance, there is a chance, we could all fail our test. This knowledge you gain as a result of it will be incredible. So let's just continue with that. All right, let's talk about, actually, I'm going to jump ahead and then we'll go back. Let's talk about your study methodology. How do you study for this test? And I think if I was to give you one key through this entire certification challenge, one key that will guarantee your success, it is being consistent. That's right. No matter how you be consistent, it's important to be consistent. So what I did last year was I more or less formalized my study plans from previous years. But what I did is I decided I was going to spend 15 minutes a day studying on the JavaScript developer test. And my goal was 4 times a week. So I would have one business day a week that was a break. And that's what I would do. 4 days a week, I would spend 15 minutes studying every day. I did that starting beginning of January, and I did it through the beginning of March. And I passed the test. And I have seen this over and over and over again. The people who are most likely to fail the test, yes, there are people who fail the test that don't have the knowledge or experience, but it is almost always those people who have taken a big break. They did a whole bunch of study, they got burned out, they took a big break, or they got pulled off on big projects and have big deadlines, etc. They come back, they try to take the test, they fail. No, your studying is additive. It is cumulative. Every day you have to invest in this studying. 15 to 30 minutes a day, whatever you do, set a goal that's achievable. So don't say an hour a day, because chances are that's probably not going to be feasible. Maybe it is, and that's wonderful. But something more bite-sized, like 15 to 30 minutes a day. Do it. Mark it on your calendars if necessary. And study the first thing in the morning. Close Slack. Or turn your phone over so you can't see your notifications come in. Close your email. Whatever it takes, spend that 15 to 30 minutes a day studying. First thing, if you need to come in an extra 15 minutes early, consider doing that. Maybe ask your manager if you can have an extra 15 minutes a day on the clock once your day starts. So if you come in at normally at 8, come in at 7:45 and study till 8:15. Then you start working. Consider having that conversation with your manager. This will work. I can guarantee you, if you study every day and you work through these sections, every section on the specific study guide that you're working through, you'll pass. I can literally guarantee it. You will pass. So that is probably the biggest key that I could give you through these conversations. I got some more comments we got to catch up on here. Kate said, do you have any suggestions for finding exercises to work through for JavaScript and front-end certification? I find that diving into the code is really helpful in solidifying the concepts. Absolutely. Technically, I'll be talking about this next week, but we'll just probably jump ahead and we'll talk about that here in just a second in this the slide I just skipped. You saw me skip it. Gareth, yep, there's a few gotchas in very specific class paths that they throw in. Ones look feasible, and yeah, I agree. Tiago, whoa. I've taken the associate exam, passed with 91%. That's a smoking good score. That is phenomenal. Good job. Good for you there. 1 year later, took the professional developer and failed with a 60%. Ouch. Boy, that really stinks. That's like, I think you're like 3% off there. 3% away from passing it. Boy, I understand. That'd be some heartache there. I agree. So how can I get better? Okay, so what we've been talking about up to this point is the associate or the now professional. It has to be taken in close proximity to the expert test. If you have a year difference, chances are all that investment that you did, and especially to get a 91%, I will literally guarantee you would have passed the expert developer if you would have taken it a month later. Because it was a year later, I think enough knowledge expired in your brain that it's just how it happens. It kind of goes by the wayside. There's just nothing we can do about it. But that's probably why you failed. So it's going to take another very concerted effort, which looks like you're part of the certification challenge here. And so you're going to be making that concerted effort to be able to pass, which is excellent. Okay, Simon, so maybe go for the cloud first. You know, you can consider that. If you have access to a cloud environment and you work through the study guide, I think you're going to pass. Okay, and let me actually, one thing I forgot to do when I was talking about cloud. Cloud is my case study for it's in stupidity. I'm just going to say that. I think that was 2018. What was it? 2019. 2019. I think 2019. Yeah. I decided I'm going to take the cloud certification. I had never worked in cloud, but it's not that difficult. I think I had a cloud sandbox. I poked around the cloud sandbox. What's cloud? Like, I mean, it's just a little bit of Nginx and some Redis and some Elasticsearch, and all this stuff comes together. We have a little configuration. Super easy. Let's just take it and pass. I failed. I failed miserably. I think I got like a 50%. I was mad at myself. It's like, what in the world? Like, when I got into that test, I was like, I don't understand what they're talking about. Like, this stuff just doesn't make sense. So I went through and I studied, and that's where when I wrote the study guide, I went through, studied. Then I said, well, before I release a study guide, I have to take this test and pass it. I mean, this would be ridiculous otherwise. I took the test a second time, and I think I got well into the 80s, maybe the 90s% on the test. I was like, when I went through that, I was like, dude, this is easy. So cloud is incredibly knowledge based. And that's what proved to me. Just working through it, it was super easy to grasp once I had done some study. So I think that when I've seen that observation has extended out to quite a few other people as well. All right, let's see here. Yeah. So Simon, I guess I say that I can't say whether. I guess my concern is I don't think cloud is similar enough to the expert developer in order for it to carry over there. So you're going to get the idea of the Magento test questions, but not necessarily in the line that the expert is written in or is planning towards. So if you're going to take expert, I would probably suggest starting with professional, just in the interest of being safe here. Cyan said the first try got 73%. In the test kit, studying hard for better. Can you help me understand which position I can understand ready to take the exam? All right, that's a great question. So taking this Magento or taking our practice test got a 73%. That's a pretty good score. The professional developer, I think there's 3 test pools in there. And I wish I had more time because I have a whole truckload of questions more to add to those. I just haven't worked through and finalized editing them. That's going to be really close. Like, for example, if you're, I think the professional previously associate, so we're talking about the same thing here. The previously associate test, I think, is the score or the passing grade for that is like upper 60s, I think 68. So 73% on the Swift Otters test if it's roughly in line, which it is pretty well in line, it's going to be close. So I would suggest pushing for a higher score. But again, if you are looking at the answers to those questions, consider it as devaluing the practice test as you take it again. So every time you look at the answers for a previous practice test form, you more or less can't take that practice test again, because you're going to remember at least some number of the questions, which is going to increase your score, which is going to give you false hope that you're going to be able to pass this test, and then you fail, and then you're really disappointed. And that's the last thing I want either. All right, Leonardo, what's the best way to study for the associate developer test? DevDocs, Code Dive. We'll talk about that here. Yes, we will talk about that. Best way to study. All right, we got some questions. I think we are on the right track. Let's dig in for talking about studying for this professional developer test, previously associate. All right, so Magento DevDocs. We're going to be talking about those here in just a minute. I'm talking about plugins. So if you were a accomplished reader, you could go through the DevDocs, read every single page on that. But I hate to say it, I don't think that is enough to pass. I don't think it is. You could, and that's a great exercise. I mean, you're going to learn a lot. For example, like, when was the last time we read through the limitations of the plugin limitations? Now, chances are for most of us developers, we're not writing final classes or methods. It's just how it works. We're not writing those. But where I think we do come across a number of those in the Magento core. So yeah, this could be a case if we're modifying Magento core code that we would run into this. Static methods, yes. Constructors, virtual types. I think that's been a gotcha for me. I've run into this before. So reading through the DevDocs is incredibly helpful, and I highly recommend it. But before we do that, what I suggest we look at is the study guides. Now, Adobe certification has a study guide for each one of these tests. So you can go to the Adobe website. I don't think I have it pulled up my tabs here. You can go to the Adobe, type into Google Adobe certification, Adobe Learning Certification, or Adobe Certification should pull it up there. It's on the first page of their certification area. Click into your test. About halfway down, there is a link to the study guide. Click into the study guide and you can work through it. Actually, let me just do this. Make it real easy. There we go. All right. So here we are. Let's say you want to go for the Adobe Certified Professional Magento Commerce Developer. Click into this. And so we can see the download exam guide. This is, if you're wanting to take this test, this is where you would go. Click into registered now. But if you're wanting the study guide, you click into download exam guide, click into English, and you will see this exam guide, study guide, whatever you want to call it. Now, it's fairly basic, and it has, well, this is what the test was written from. This literally comes from the Magento test writing blueprint. This is what's nailed down, and then those who are writing questions, and I've helped write a couple of these tests now, we write questions that are inspired from each one of these sections. So one thing we can take from this is, if this is not actually on, if there's not a question or a concept in the study guide or the exam guide, there will not be one of those. There won't be questions about that on the test. Almost guaranteed. I mean, maybe something will be tangentially related, but Peter and the team that was writing these tests was really dogged about making sure that these questions lined up with what is on the study guide. So this is what you're going to work. You will work through. So you would say, okay, describe module architecture. What are the significant steps to adding a new module? Well, what are the significant steps? So maybe you go read some stuff online. Maybe you go into the Magento core code, install a new module. What does it take to install that? Well, that might be where you then go into DevDocs. All right. Let's see here. I'm not seeing that component development. I'm not seeing it easily here, but there's a whole article on creating a new module. So what I suggest you do then is not just create the module. Well, so then you go through and create a module, a sample test module. You're going to go do that. When would you place a module in the app code folder versus another location? Well, like installing a module versus into the vendor directory. That's pretty much the two places you would store modules, either in vendor or app code. Why would you do it in one of those places or another? And again, it's funny. I honestly hesitate in bringing up the stuff that I earn money from, simply because this is not a money earning thing. It's to help encourage you in what you are doing, to help motivate you. And it's not a sales tool in the slightest. But I do have to put mine in there because I've seen it work. And basically what ours is this Magento study guide, but with each one of these as a heading in it. And there's a whole bunch of information below each one of these headings. And so it gives you places to go look in the Magento core code. It gives you information, what to study, what to remember, that sort of thing. So it's kind of like a filled out study guide, something that has already been built for you, on which you can continue to build. And I've seen it work for a lot of people. So again, I throw that out there. There's a couple of free ones. GitHub, I think there's one for the expert developer, one for I don't know about the professional developer. There's also something that's been pulled together a little bit for the solution specialist, previously solution specialist, now business practitioner, if you want to go the free route. So that all works as well. But literally line by line through these study guides, you're going to go through it. Now, taking a different approach, and one that I've actually seen being even more effective, is, and again, I always hesitate saying this, but is our project guides or our courses, particularly for the developer ones. Take this different approach. Basically, it's building a module step by step, a highly practical module. You go through and you build this module, and there's videos on how to do it. There's written instructions on how to do it. And there's also the study guide that is referenced back to throughout this project. So it's basically, instead of studying specifically for the test, you are learning Magento skills and tangentially studying for the Magento test at the same time. And I find that it works. I'm going to say almost 100% of the time. I mean, it works incredibly well. So those two routes that you can take, both are very successful. One thing I forgot to say here is Magento user guide is helpful for the business practitioner. If you are studying for the business practitioner, that's a very, very good resource for studying there. Okay. Chris asked if I have a project guide available for the front-end certification. No, not yet. Something I will definitely consider, but at this point, I do not have a project guide for that. Oh, man, Nitin said, missed the passing expert exam by 2 points. Seems theoretical knowledge on every topic isn't enough. Never will be sure what I marked wrong. Okay, one thing to say, if you did miss your certification for whatever reason, email Adobe and they will send you your score per objective. On most of these tests, well, we could look at this one here. There is six sections. So you can't necessarily know for sure, but you can go into a section and see what was your lowest marks on a section. Then you go study up on that section. So that more or less helps you zero in, gives you a much better chance as far as understanding what's going on. So if you do fail a test, email Adobe, and they will be able to give you your score per objective. That is very helpful. Okay. Any other questions before we jump into... I want to just give a brief overview of plugins. And I know not all of you are backend developers, but this is a really important topic. A lot of people struggle with this, and we'll just take a quick overview on it. I think we'll be able to answer the most difficult questions about that. Oh, okay. Let me do a couple here. Okay. Chris asked as well, do I have any studying advice for a front-end developer who just started working with Magento a few months ago and does not have extensive experience working with the environment? Yes, that is difficult. The advice I have is get in there and do it. And that's where the study guide can be especially helpful in working through that. So like even the Magento study guide. So you say, okay, these are the topics that we see on the test. And at this point, I need to okay, creating a theme. Okay, what does it take to create a theme? Well, let's go create a theme. Let's go look at the dev docs. How do we create a theme? There's tons of articles on creating a Magento theme. It's one of the easier things to write an article about. Okay, well, let's create a new less style sheet. Okay, let's extend one. Let's override one. I think the way you can substitute time on the job experience is by manufacturing that and replicating yourself. It won't help you as much with the questions related to errors. And a good number of those questions related to errors are only seen through time on the job. There's just stuff that you're not going to be able to see in your practical experience. But I think from most of these questions, you would be able, for most of these tests, maybe I'm going to say all of them, you should be able to pass it based off of your deep dives in practical experience. Yeah, just reading is not enough. Even, I'm going to say this, reading one of our study guides, just reading through it like a novel, picking it up, reading it through, it is not going to be enough to pass the test. You have to have practical experience. Now, I will say this, what I have seen very clearly is if you have, say, a couple years of Magento 2 experience, you decide you're going to go take the test, you go read the study guide, and that will help refresh you, and then you can go take the test. But if you are new, the study guide is your guide through these concepts in Magento. Okay. Ankit said, do you suggest some extensions to be developed as practicing for expert exam? Absolutely. In our project guide, what we do there for the expert developer is we create a gift card extension. I was thinking this through. I was like, okay, what would be one of the most difficult Magento extensions we can tackle? And I thought gift card, there's some really interesting complexity there. And I was not disappointed. I tell you what, we dive into some deep inventory management stuff there, modifying the checkout, UI components, and it was really awesome. I learned a ton of stuff through it. I was stoked. I was like, dude, this is awesome. I learned a ton through it. So if that's what it takes, just digging in line by line. And that's where with these, the project guides, you can find them on our website, swiftauto.com/certifications. Those project guides are kind of a explosion, if you will, of exactly what we've been talking about. That's what I've been doing. And to be frank, you can do it on your own. There's, obviously I built out what I have seen works, but there is nothing stopping you from doing it on your own. And that's what I highly recommend. Just get in there and do it. So if you want a guide, that's our guide. But if you want to do it yourself, do it. You can do it. Absolutely. All right. So this is great. So let's jump back into one other thought I had. When studying, and I hope every one of you makes a commitment, starting Monday morning, you will begin to study every single day. But you are going to run into those topics as you are working through this. Maybe, let's just take an example. This is the professional developer. Demonstrate ability to create UI customizations using a combination of block and template. You're like, what? I don't know how to do that. That seems stupid. Or it seems really hard. I've never done this before. Oh boy, I don't really want to have to do this. I'll just go to the next one. I know about different types of blocks. I'll just skip it and study that one. You're making a mistake. I'm being really clear. You are making a mistake. Don't do that. What you need to do is say, oh, I don't know this one very well. I am going to dig in and I am going to learn this like crazy. I am going to be an expert at this specific topic and become an expert at it. That's the attitude you have to have when going through these study guides. And it will work. All right. So I want to take just a couple of minutes and talk about one of the stickier areas that is covered on Magento tests. And that is plugins. Now, here is my example. Let me just pull this over here. Hopefully this is big enough so you can see what's going on. This is actually part of the Professional Developer Plus, or now it's called the Master Architect. Actually, we can make our screen bigger by moving this up a little bit. There we go. Oops, I can probably pull it up a little bit more. Yeah, you can see more code. And actually, I'm going to disappear for just a minute. So with the Professional Developer Plus, this is sample code that is included here. And my goal was to explore this idea of plugins because there's some weird functionality that happens here, or at least it seems weird. So I built out a module to explore how this works. And this is what I'm suggesting for you as well. If you want to go through the study guide route, take one of these concepts and study it like crazy. So you say, okay, well, plugins. I mean, if you think about it, sort order for plugins, this is pretty benign, right? I mean, we just have a sort order. So how does that work? Well, if we take even a moment to look at sort order here in the Magento Dev Docs, which again, this is a great read. And by the way, one little gotcha that, where is this? Yes. Actually two gotchas here available that I want to quickly share with you on plugin, or on before plugins. No, actually after plugins. Well, one on each. Before you can return a null value instead of returning the parameters that were passed in. Normally you return an array of the parameters passed in, but you can return a null value, meaning that these values were not changed. Right there, it saves you potential breakage in your code. And I can't remember, but just keep that in mind for the test. The other one is the after. And we're all familiar with the context, the class of the plugin, or the class of the class name that we are modifying is, or the class that we are modifying is passed in as the first parameter. The second parameter is the result from the method that we are modifying. But did you know that after that are the parameters that were passed into this original method? So in this case, I don't think I have this code that was. Okay, well here is the method signature. So product IDs, website IDs, and type. And so in our after method, after plugin, we can allow for a parameter for product IDs and website IDs. That matches the order in which it was specified in this method signature here. And that can be very helpful for after methods. And I do happen to know that that is talked about on the test. So again, this stuff is, you have to go through and memorize this stuff to understand what's going on. All right, so prioritizing plugins. Now, the first thing to understand here is that plugins are sorted with their merge sequence. What is the merge sequence? Well, right here. It is defined in the sequence node from module XML. So I can make a module dependent on another module, and I'm not going to go too deep here, but we see this module is dependent on Magento customer. Now, that brings up a whole nother area of concern of how our modules sorted. In the Expert Developer Project Guide, we have a whole section, what I call deep dive, that goes through understanding exactly how the module sort order works. What is the default order? So we can come in here, and this is the module sort order. So if we have a plugin, let's come down to the bottom here. If there is a plugin defined in MSP two-factor auth and a plugin defined in queuing basic message queue, this will in effect have a higher sort order than MSP two-factor auth. But you can switch that around for this specific plugin using sort order here in this in di.xml. All right, so that's hopefully fairly straightforward and easy, and I'm sure all of you know that. But where this becomes interesting is when, okay, let me say one other thing. Sort order always goes up. So in this case, we have plugin A, B, and C. Each one of them has a sort order of 10, 20, 30. So the way it executes is before dispatch, before dispatch, before dispatch, and then the code runs that the actual method runs, and then we have first, then plugin A, plugin B, and plugin C for after dispatch. So it works in that order. Where it becomes interesting, though, is with an around. The around, and I'm going to jump to the very last example here. The around is what totally throws this off. So we see here we have plugin A, B, and C, and I'm going to show you how this works in the code. So don't worry about that. This is the theory behind it. Plugin A, B, and C all execute well in their sort order. So we have plugin A before dispatch, then we have the around, and then it continues up in the sort order. B, and C. But where it becomes interesting is that the plugins after this one execute for the after sequence. So we see that plugin A here has a sort order of 10, and everything higher than that sort order is then executed. So inside of this around, we see plugin B and C after the after dispatch then runs. Finally, once this entire around subroutine finalizes, then it calls anything that is equal to or less than or equal to plugin A's sort order. So that's where it's interesting. And that's where a lot of this confusion comes. I was confused. I was very confused for a while about how this stuff worked. So having this module really helps. So basically, and we're not going to get too deep into this, but we can see, and I think I'm going to undo my modifications here. All right, so I just basically created a whole bunch of plugins. I tried to create some rhyme and reason for this. Just went through and created all these plugins. Then I came over here and I will refresh this. All right, so again, this is a very similar idea to how Magento's documentation works. I didn't copy that, but at least I created a scenario that I thought was fairly similar to this. So we have example one, before one, example one, both one. So this has, both one has before and after in it. So we see example, here's the before and here's the after. Example of one before one, this is called a second time. So you can define a plugin multiple times. That was proving that. Now we have the around. The around is, you can see around one here is executed both of these places. And then finally, and you'll notice example one, both one is outside of that. So we have the example run around one, inside of that, example one, both two. So both two executes after this. So in all the sort orders listed here very clearly. So we see after is 40, 50, 55. This subroutine is completed, and then we have 15 at the end. So sort orders always work up, except inside of a around, and then the sorters work up inside of that for anything that is greater than that plugin sort order. Now, the funny thing is, chances of you having to deal with this on almost even a monthly basis or even a biannual basis is probably pretty slim. But it is on the test, and it is very highly expected that you would know this. So that's why we talk about it. And again, my goal is to prepare you for this. It's about time for us to sign off here. Is there any other questions that I can help answer before we call it a day? And it's been great. It's been absolutely great having you a part. I love the energy, love the conversation we've had, and I am very much looking forward to our next conversation here in 2 weeks. And again, I will be sending out a whole invite schedule so you can go through and mark as part of your calendar, so you don't forget. I do not want you to forget, because we're talking about some great stuff next week. Any other questions before we call it a wrap on our conversation here today? Yes, Chris, these videos are being recorded, so you can go back through and watch it all you want. I will drop it into our Slack channel, so you can come back, watch it anytime. That plugin section, I did have to go through a little bit faster than I was hoping. We had such great conversation at the beginning. I had to get through a little quicker than I wanted. But yeah, if you have questions on that, also feel free to rewatch or just pop them into the Slack channel. All right, very good. Get studying. Make that commitment to be very consistent in your studying. And ladies and gentlemen, I am very grateful to have you a part of this, and I wish you the very best as you go forward, as you continue your studying endeavors for this. Oh, I have one other question. Simon, do I need to study any specific topics before next week's chat? So whatever, take the study guide that you have been studying. Here's what, and I'll work on adding this into our next conversations, but take what you're studying, the test you're studying for, start working through that study guide. Line by line, that's what you're working through for the next months, what you're doing. So just start into that. If you have questions, things that you're not able to figure out, things that you're and I think this is a great question to ask in the Slack channels, is I am trying to study this. What are the best ways to prove or to enhance my knowledge of this? That will be a great question, and I can guarantee you'll be well answered in the Slack channel. I think what is not as good answered is what is the answer to this question. So people, and I find this rather universal, people love to help you as you are on your journey. They don't like to feed you questions and all that. So I say that as general advice across to all of our viewers today. Oh, yes. One other thing, Adarsh says, had some videos about the developer study guide on our channel. Yes, it was a difficult decision, but I ended up converting that into the basic Magento developer course. And that is for the professional exam, previously associate. I put that course together as an experiment. I did not know if this idea would work or not. I was a little bit hesitant, a little bit nervous, because it was something I had never done like this before. And that was the idea of taking a very practical project, and that project is an order export project where we are focusing in on taking an order, and it's something I've built out personally for a merchant that we've worked with. So I took that idea, taking an order and pushing it out to like a third-party ERP for fulfillment. So that was the idea. It was building a whole module, and I needed to prove it. So that's where I put it on YouTube for a while. And to be frank, my friends, it worked. It worked. Like, people were getting certified like crazy. I thought, to be able to justify this from a business perspective, I had to, I converted over into a course, and I've still seen just great success with that. And it makes me thrilled. Like, my goal is to be able to help people. I love helping people in any way possible. And this course has helped people. And so that's why I converted over into a paid course. And then I built on that, and I built the expert course out too. So it's kind of I learned on it, and that's where I'm taking it. I took it to the next level. So anyways, it is wonderful having you all here. Thank you for joining, and I wish you the very best next 2 weeks of study. Feel free to drop any questions you have into the Slack channel. I am there. I watch it all the time, and I look forward to continuing the conversation, and we will meet again in 2 weeks. Take care.